Good morning and welcome to a special live in focus Friday morning. Yes, it's not Thursday night at 6, it is Friday morning, but we're doing a special live in focus with our state legislators. I'm very happy that they were able to join us. Representative Dick Hamm, State Senator Jeff Raatz, and Representative Tom Saunders. Thank you very much. They just wrapped up doing a legislative session at IU East. They have been doing those for the last few years. They come out normally once a month during the session, talk about some bills, and take questions from constituents. We're going to follow up on some of that conversation and give them a chance to talk about what's been going on at the State House as we reach the midpoint. Want to let you know that next Thursday night will also be a special in focus, a little different than what we normally have. Mayor Dave Snow has decided that he wants to do a State of the City address, and he's going to use the In Focus program on Thursday evening to deliver that speech here in the WCTV studio. It will also be carried live on WKBV, AM and FM, 1490 AM, 100.9 FM, and we'll also have it streaming live on our video on demand site as well as available on Facebook Live. So Thursday night, March 2nd, 6 p.m., an In Focus special will be the State of the City address with Mayor Dave Snow. That is not a Q&A, that is his speech, so you'll have a chance to talk to him, and then we'll have him back in a few weeks to actually get into some questions and answers. But these gentlemen have been nice enough to provide us with some of their time, different than some of the federal legislators who are leaving some of their town halls early or ducking them. I take my hat off to you all. You have consistently, except when weather or the session changed, tried to come out during the session and talk to constituents, hear what they had to say about bills that were pending, and like this morning, a wide variety of topics that were brought up this morning. But what I want to give you a chance to do is what you didn't do in the legislative forum, which is take a couple of minutes, talk about the session as it is right now as you reach this halfway point. What has been the high point, low point for you so far? And we'll start with you, Representative Hamm.
Well, naturally, the budget is always the biggest issue in this particular session, and then of course road funding is taking up a considerable amount of time. We do have some social issues that have jumped up in that we're discussing, but all in all, at this particular junction, it's very difficult for me as a legislator to say this is going to happen, that's going to happen, this way or that way, simply because time we take the budget, we got the governor's budget, we've got the House budget, and then we'll soon have the Senate budget, and then we start crossing back and forth and putting them all together, and hopefully we come out with a good budget. And we've had in our caucus some strong discussions about the budget already. There's some of us that have questioned things that were in the budget, and there's been some changes made at this particular junction. That being said, it's very difficult to pinpoint exactly what's going to happen until we get through those other two or three situations with the other caucus and the other caucus, and which is the Senate. So.
Okay. Senator Raatz.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Eric. As Dick said, and we'll just really quick, I'll explain the process. So the first half of the session, for the viewers, first half of the session, each body, the House and the Senate, they vet all their bills through the committee, pass them across the floor, and at halftime, which we're approaching next week, whatever the Senate does sends it to the House, whatever the House does sends it to the Senate, and then, of course, after that's all done, then all the bills go back to the House they originated in. If they've been changed, they're vetted one more time, and then we go to the end of the process. And so as long as the legislator is present, every piece of legislation that will be voted, that will be signed by the governor, legislator, 150 of us, will have had the opportunity to vote on every piece of legislation. And so there's a lot of compromise that will still happen, some grudgingly, some happily. And so that's just the process. And so mentioning, to follow up with what Representative Hamm said, that's kind of the process. Not kind of, it is the process constitutionally. In the Senate, the House, it's their responsibility to author the budget constitutionally. And so all the different departments across the state that have budgets that are supported by the Senate, or not the Senate, but by the state, they have to go to the House and present their budgets. That's something the Senate we don't see because of how the process works. So particularly, I have a couple of initiatives, one that deals with teacher compensation that it's not terribly significant, but it certainly will help teachers that have get a bump. If I can get it across the House now, I got it out of the Senate and get it across the House. Give teachers incentives to get a higher ed degree, and so that's one of the initiatives. And then, of course, as well, I have a singular bill on opioid use that would be a pilot program, and if I can get that thing across the Senate floor Monday and Tuesday, it'll go to the House, and that would benefit Wayne County and Allen County and Marion County as a pilot program. And so that's a significant issue. There's probably, I don't know how many bills are in the House on opioid use, but with the epidemic we're facing, there's a lot of initiative there to try and alleviate some of the problem as best we can from the state level.
Representative Saunders. Sorry.
Thanks, Eric. That's all right. As Jeff said, we're at the halfway point. Excuse me. And we, a lot of, we had our town hall this morning. It started out this morning, I had a little concern because the first couple of questions had to do with federal issues. And, I want to thank the people that returned my survey. And if they wrote a comment on the bottom, when I'm sending out the letter, I look at what their comments are, read and try to jot something down. And I noticed yesterday I had more and more people wanting me to do something about Obamacare, repeal and replace, and a lot of federal issues. So, people have to understand the difference between what's going on in Washington and what's going on in Indianapolis. Our job is to pass a 2-year budget. $36 billion, I think. We had second readings on it yesterday. We'll go back on Monday. I think we'll probably be done Monday afternoon. Our third readings will be done. We'll have a few days break. We'll go back and then we'll take up the Senate issues. But, Henry County, we're kind of the joke for local roads around here. For years, people could tell me, they could tell when they went into Henry County by the condition of the roads. So I'm committed to try to bring more local road money home to my constituents. I serve on Roads and Transportation, and the bill that we passed pertaining to road funding, gas tax increases. There's a proposal to study tolling in Indiana. That would be, I-70 would be tolled, and at this point of the juncture, the governor would make that decision by himself. I think the legislature should have some input on that. So, and in the Senate, they increased the cigarette tax, and in our proposal, that goes to subsidize the general fund for health issues. I think under the Senate proposal, it goes into the road funding bill. So we're about to make sausage. It'll come, and we won't know how that sausage is turning out until the last day or two of session, because they always hold the budget till the last day. They hold it hostage. So,
okay. You're watching a special in focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're talking with our state representatives. We are taking your questions on this. You can give us a call, 973-8587. You can send us a tweet at WCTV Info. You can send a question through Facebook Live, or you can send us an email to WCTV@WCTV.info if you have a question for these gentlemen. I want to follow up on something that you said, because in a number of sessions and in a number of places, and even on this show, your conversation about Henry County being the butt of a lot of jokes as far as road funding goes, and what the roads look like over there has come true. I've seen it. Wayne County Council makes jokes about it, the whole 9 yards. Is it that there's not enough road funding in Henry County, or is it how they decide to use the money that they have for roads?
Well, I think twofold. We don't have the population or the revenue that Wayne County has had over the years. At one time, you guys were getting $1 million a year more than Henry County due to your population, the number of vehicles on the road. And I think years ago, not blaming these commissioners or probably the county commissioners in the past 50 years, but when the county roads were constructed, the base, just not there. And now and then with rural Indiana, we got, instead of a tractor and a couple of wagons being pulled down that highway or county road, now you got 18-wheel vehicles going down those mud-based roads, and those roads just weren't built to handle that kind of weight. So, with the fuel-efficient cars, with the gas tax being, not buying what it was 5 years ago, the money just was not there. Henry County did enact a wheel tax, but by the time they enacted the wheel tax, when you took in the fuel efficiency and the other issues, we were getting less money than we were before we enacted the wheel tax. Henry County just increased their wheel tax. So with the increase in the wheel tax, then this supplemental money we're supposed to get back from this new road funding bill, the match, hopefully that'll help.
Okay. And I'm going to start with you because I know that there are a couple of bills that you've put out. I know you've reached the halfway point, so you don't know exactly what's going to happen, and like you say, sausage is about to be made. But each of you have championed a couple of different issues during this legislative session so far. And you know at this point, for the most part, whether those bills are going to get out. If they haven't had a hearing by now and you need a third vote by Monday, it's not going to happen. So give me a couple that you have authored, championed, that are doing well, that you're happy about, and a couple that you championed that just aren't going to make it out, and talk a little bit about those so we know where you are on things.
I was brought a bill by the county surveyors that had to do with drain reconstruction and how they raise their money. Introduced a bill on that. The bill wasn't heard, but we managed to get it amended into a Ways and Means bill. So the issue is alive and well and will be sent to the Senate. I had another issue, small issue, that dealt with the Lewis and Clark license plate, and I'm on the commission down in Clarksville, and we were able to take care of that through amendment. Two bills that were important to me and I thought important to the district was the property tax exemption bill. So at least exempt property would at least pay for, it would give the locals the ability to work with that not-for-profit and try to come up with a payment in lieu of taxes. Unfortunately, that bill did not get heard. And then I had a bill that dealt with wind farm issues, setbacks, an ethics policy, not accusing anybody of any wrongdoing, but there was some concerns about transparency. And that bill didn't get heard, but I think we're going to be able to get some of those issues into another bill before the end of the session's over. So maybe parts of it remains alive. I'm still trying. I've been there, some people might say too long, but
34 years.
Not 34, 21. I've been there 21 years, and in my previous life, I was the county assessor. So taxes, if I have an expertise, it's local government and taxes. And there are properties that at least need to be paying for the services those properties receive, police and fire protection, as an example. And I've tried to do that for the years I've been there, but unfortunately, I can't get the General Assembly to see my concern.
And I'm going to follow up with you before I come to these gentlemen, because I had a chance to ask a question like that to Craig Kenyon, who's president and CEO of Reed, and I also had a chance to ask it to Richmond Common Council, who we had here a few weeks ago. If an organization is actually and can prove that they are giving to the community in other ways, equal to, better than, close to, whatever you want to use, what their property taxes would be, is it that you need them or want to see them give to certain things, police, fire, sanitation, or is their general largesse to the community good enough?
Well, if you own property, you have fire insurance on that property. What good is the fire insurance if you don't have a fire department to come put out the fire? And you're paying more for your fire service because they're not paying anything. And in the 20 years since I left the assessor's office, that exempt property has grown and grown. I had a property in Henry County I won't mention by name. Last time I did, they got upset with me. But I said, they don't pay any. Well, they called me and they said, yes, we do. And I said, well, who do you pay it to? Well, we pay $3,000 to the city of Newcastle. Well, their tax bill would have been $106,000. So is that a fair payment in lieu of taxes? No. I appreciate the fact they were given a little, but when you've got property across the state, and it's not just in Wayne County, and you've got a not-for-profit here, and well, we'll just mention Reed Hospital. The negative publicity they're getting, I don't know what they're paying. They're saying they're giving to the community, but I would hope that they would be willing to sit down with the city and county officials and try to work out some agreement. Maybe they are giving the amount of money that their taxes would be, but in this, we don't know that. I think that's the concern that the people that are coming to these meetings and writing us letters are concerned about.
Okay, thanks. Senator Raatz, what have you kind of championed? I know you mentioned your opiate pilot program.
Correct.
What else have you authored that did or didn't make it out?
Let's see, I lost probably, well, I authored 11 bills or 12 bills, I don't know exactly which, and only
you
three.
You have a long list.
Yeah, but those are, some of those are not truly ones that were initiatives I authored, excuse me, but so I'm probably going to end up with 4 bills that I authored directly, and again, the ones that I mentioned, I think that are significant, are addressing some of the issues with higher ed degrees for teachers and the ability for school corporations to give them bumps in their salary and salaries, I should say, and then the opioid bill. Those are the 2 big ones. There's a lot of other initiatives I'm a part of, but a lot of times, just like in the House, when you lend your name to a specific initiative, it's because you believe in that initiative, and you see something you like, and you say, "Hey, I want my name on there. I want to help you, or at least try to help shepherd the process if you get that opportunity." But it helps to have multiple names on good initiatives because it shows support when we all go to pass them, or if we were to speak about a specific issue here, we say, hey, Representative Saunders and Representative Hamm are on that bill, and so that's why all the list of things that are under my name are that way. So.
Anything that's not coming out that you were really
I don't think so. No, I didn't have anything that I expected to come out, not come out. Let's put it that way. I knew there were a few pieces of legislation I knew that were over the top and specific to maybe a specific constituent that I said, okay, we'll go it. I don't think it's going to gain traction, but certainly that's kind of how the process works. Especially if you want to try to be, have a listening ear to those who you represent over there. But it's a difficult balancing act as well. And I know both of these guys know that the specific instance here would in this district or my district or Wayne County or Henry County, if we initiated something across the state, it would cause chaos everywhere else, but it'd keep it comfortable here. And so those are all the things that we have to keep in mind when a piece of legislation goes across the table. If the governor signs it and it's not specific to one county, it affects everybody. Right. So it's a balancing act. So, and I want to just mention on what Tom was talking about, the Reed Hospital issue, and I think probably how that money makes it back to Spring Grove. They're the ones that are suffering the most because of the tax-exempt property, and so that's where the big issue is. I'm not going to argue that Reed Hospital is giving back to the community. I don't know those numbers necessarily. I'm certain they're available somewhere, and how they're value or created, that I don't know. But getting back to the loss of revenue for Spring Grove is where the issue is at.
Okay. And it's happening in other places.
Correct. Yeah, not just Reed Hospital. Yeah, this is as Dick mentioned or Representative Hamm and Representative Saunders, across the state, it's an issue. It's not just here in Wayne County. I'm not saying necessarily in many counties, but it's an issue.
Representative Hamm?
I'm going to follow up a little bit on what Senator was talking about. Reed Hospital, we get a lot of pushback. I get a lot of conversations. I get a lot of calls. I get a lot of emails and a lot of mail. And part of that problem is like, you know, Chester Boulevard out here is a well-traveled. That's 27, and people are coming from Fountain City, and the people see them Reed Hospital buy a building and then tear it down and put up a brand new building, and really they couldn't see anything wrong with the old building, and there may have been. And so we have to try to answer those questions. Now I'm reasonably sure that Reed Hospital, and we all know that, give back to a lot of organizations, nonprofits within the community. There's no question about that. Do they give back the amount that the property tax would be? I can't answer that. I think like we said before, that might be a good question. They may want to answer that. They may want to come public and say, you know, here's what we are doing. Now they're required to do that. They used to years ago. They give the county $70,000 or $80,000 in lieu of property taxes. You remember that? Well, then they withdrew that and went backwards, and that's been changed. Just exactly how, I'm not sure. So that being said,
I don't know.
you know, then they have fundraisers and things of that nature. People see all this, and as I've explained to our caucus and our people in Indianapolis, our constituents are not dumb. They're smart people, and they know what's going on. And we, as their representatives, have got to realize that and recognize their concerns. And this is, as I said before, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, it used to be a 0, now it's about a 3. And it's continually going to rise, because it's not only happening here in Wayne County, it's happening in Marion County and Indianapolis. And when that starts happening, Tom and Jeff will both tell you things do start to move a little quicker. Now, back to mine. I introduced 5 bills this year. One of them I withdrew. A couple of them they didn't get heard. The one that I'm really interested in, well, there's 2 really. I mean, one of them is it's volunteer firefighters. I've introduced this bill 3 sessions now. I want to give volunteer firefighters a $500 up to a $500 credit on their Indiana state taxes. And if we don't start addressing these kinds of things about firefighters, we're volunteer firefighters, we're going to lose that group. They're slowly but surely, it's deteriorating every year. If we in Wayne County would have to put fire protection and pay for it, like we do the city of Richmond, Indiana is the only one that's got a paid fire department. Everybody else in the county is volunteers. And some of these wives are saying to these husbands, why are you going there every night, or why are you going there for training? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing it? For nothing, or a very small amount. So we have got to start to address this problem, and I'm really hoping that I'll get some traction before. I did put out a bill that I did send over to Senator, a gun bill. I feel very strongly that we need to address this gun problem that we've got in the United States, Indiana, Richmond, Indiana, all over the state. These young people that are using these guns in a crime, they go in and the penalty does not really match the crime. My bill extended that if you used a gun in a felony and was convicted, mandatory 10 years. And I couldn't get any traction. I did meet with the state prosecutors, and we had a long conversation. I made some adjustments and made some amendments. I still could not get it heard. I did send it to the Senator Raatz. He took it to the chairman of their committee. I'm hoping that they'll pick that up. You know, we went through an era now in timeout. You know what I mean by timeout. Mom and Dad said to the child, you did wrong, so timeout. You go over and stand in the corner. Well, they went over there for 20 seconds and then they come back. And that timeout's not working. We have got to we can't have these young people thinking there's no penalty for doing these crimes. with a gun, and that's so you can tell I'm very passionate about this particular issue. I think it needs to be addressed somehow.
I'm curious. Did you talk to state prosecutors about it? What was their take? Because as I read it, and I did actually come across that one, it seemed pretty rigid. It was 10 years. It couldn't be plea bargained away.
I changed it when the prosecutors came and met with me, because I had their lobbyist, prosecutor's lobbyist, plus four prosecutors came and we sat down and talked about it. I did change some language from shall to may, but the problem of it was that if they felt like that taking that away from the judges probably wouldn't fly. My comment to that but the judges at this particular junction are not being strict enough and are letting people that, you can read about a guy that had drug paraphernalia and got 5 years. Then you read about a guy that just did a robbery and he got 3, and he had a gun. So what I'm saying is that there is the problem. We need to tell the prosecutors and the judges, you plea bargain whatever you want, but mandatory 10 years if you use a gun with a crime and it's a felony. Now, they really liked it because I increased the felonies. In other words, right at this particular, now the way the law reads, there's only about 4 felonies with a gun that have real stronger penalties. This opened it up to all felonies. If you have a felony with a gun, then you're so. But it didn't get the traction. I'll be back.
Okay. You wanted to.
Well, I found out today. I thought it's what we talk about in Indianapolis when we go to our caucuses. It's education, and what's taken up the most time this year has been education, constitutional right to carry, and notification on some abortion issues. And we've spent more time on those issues, and one of those issues came up today, and it was education. When you come home, it's education, it's roads, it's property taxes, and it's just the difference.
Has the conversation changed from one governor to another as far as how much time you're spending on social issues and some of the things that really caused some serious problems over the last few years?
Well, and what we're talking about in caucus is things that the legislature has brought, not necessarily the governor. I want to give the governor some credit. He was basically an unknown. He took care of the gentleman that his plea had been laying on the governor's desk for 2 years, where he was exonerated with DNA. That guy's out of prison now, which should have happened 2 years ago. He's addressing the water problems up in northern Indiana, East Chicago, and Lake County. I'm impressed with the start of what Governor Holcomb's doing, and I met with his office the other day on some concerns my people had about location of wind farms and close to proximities to communities, what they might do to future development for this part of the state. I was impressed with his administration, and and he hasn't talked to me or that I've read about the social issues. So,
and if I can, I'll say I think he made that pretty clear up front when he was running that the social issues would be kind of off the table, if you will, to some degree, so. Interestingly enough for me, this is the second governor that I've served under. Tom and Dick know a little bit better, but their leadership style and how they influence the legislature remains to be seen yet. I certainly see a difference between him or Governor Holcomb and Governor Pence, and Governor Holcomb grew up, I guess, if you will, under the Daniels administration. So I'm curious to see just how, if he functions like Governor Daniels did, and some of the things I've heard about that. So it'll be a interesting ride here in the next 3.5 years to see how Governor Holcomb actually operates.
Education is something that is a large part of the budget. You've pointed out numerous occasions the percentages between K-12 and post-secondary education, how much of the budget is spent on that. The questions this morning seem to be not about necessarily how much money is being spent, but about the fairness of the system across the board. Is that something, even more than throwing money to the problem, that the state legislators really need to deal with? Is the fairness between public schools, charter schools, and even maybe to a certain extent, and I know that it came up this morning, but homeschool, just so that everything is as fair and equitable as possible. Not so much about obviously funding's always going to be the deal.
Correct.
But I think everybody's happier if the playing field is level, and that doesn't seem to be the case right now.
I'd suggest that when we talk about a level playing field, ultimately it does come down to money at some level. I mean, it may not be on the surface. We talked this morning about charter schools, and there's an initiative in the House, I understand, I didn't know that till this morning, that sanctioning some companies maybe to come in from out of state, and my contention was that we don't give enough money for companies to come in and make money, to be honest with you. That's when it comes to charter schools, let's put it that way, to come in and invade an area, that's probably a pretty strong word to use, but to come into an area like, let's say it came into Richmond and wanted to create a charter school, which we had one a number of years back when the initiative came out, and that failed probably the second year, if I'm not mistaken. That particular school did. But it does come down to money somewhere along the way. It might be the second or third thing down the under the surface, if you will, because if a student moves from one place to the next, what happens? The money follows the student. At least the state portion does. There's still the local property tax that still goes to the school, no matter if the student is there or not. And as Dick always mentions, it's 51%, I think, of the general budget that we spend on public education. 56.
Well, it's 52 right now, and 12% on post-secondary.
Right.
And the number, and the chart on the back of that shows you that it's growing. I don't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, and so I'd like to move on to testing and just mention that there's an initiative. You know, the I-STEP is a huge issue, and it comes up every time, the testing issue. And so I got my staff right now creating a chart that shows what the federal government requires, what the state requires, and then everything off that sheet is what the locals use to determine how a student is progressing in the grades. And so there's a lot of angst and anger out there. Some of it I think we deserve at the General Assembly. There was an unfortunate set of circumstances that no one created. They just kind of happened. We have been going along with the I-STEP for many years, and then we thought there was an initiative to increase the standards. And so when we changed that, we had to change the test, and then the alignment then and the time it takes for the students to get used to the new standards and get them in the pipeline. It takes at least a couple of years for that to happen, so the test scores went down, and then there was the issues with the vendor compiling the test results and getting them back to us on time, and so it's been seemingly one issue after another. And I can't say we can't take some of the blame at the General Assembly, and we're not putting the blame on the locals either. It's just an unfortunate set of circumstances that seem to snowball into where we are today. Last year when we finished session, and I think we sat with you, we said it's in code, July 1st, 2017, I-STEP is no longer. Well, here we sit, and I-STEP is going to be here for another year. We have no choice. So that I assume that comes across in one of the bills where we eliminate that language in code, because it can't happen. And so there were teachers at the table this summer. There were legislators, the chairs of the committees, and business people to try and come up with a test. And so that still remains to be seen. But I don't want to state unequivocally, but I do believe that the testing requirements at the state level will decrease as far as the mandate. So we have federal mandates we have to live by. Those been eased some, and I think we will see from the state level. I would say a little bit stronger than I believe we will see out of the General Assembly this year an ease on the amount of testing that's required. Hopefully come up with an equitable solution.
Good luck with that.
All right.
Well, you know, I understand the concern about the fairness issue, because when charters were first, and choice was first proposed, it was for low-income people in failing schools. Well, over the course of years, we've expanded that way beyond that. So you got public schools concerned about loss of revenue, a fair playing field on testing and students with public and charter, and then you've got a school in Georgia who wants to come up here and maybe locate, but they want to be sure they have a fair playing field when they get here. So, a for-profit school. So, I don't know, is education supposed to be for-profit? I mean, I guess that's the next question. You know, and the other thing is, the teachers can only do so much. How do we mandate that parents have to be parents and be sure that the kids do their homework at night, be sure they get up? I got a call this morning, my neighbor wanted to know if I could take his kid to school, you know, to get that kid out of bed so he gets to school. I mean, how do we legislate that? And we seem to get, when you got kids having kids, that's a whole other issue. So, yeah, there's a fairness issue. There's also the concern about how do we, something that's not in our control, how do we make that happen?
The difficulty of the students that are entering is an issue as well. We can't deny that. It's a cultural shift, I guess.
Well, part of it, they're not even going to know how to talk to anybody, because you walk down the street, they're always looking at their phones.
No, you look like you want to say something.
Well, as I said this morning, we get pushed from everywhere. You know, we get the regular school systems, and you can see on that pie chart. I'm not, you know, that's what we're doing. You can flip it over on the backside, and you can see that the increases are for going to schools is going up every year, and that's only part of it, because, and then what people fail to remember is that only schools, regular schools, charter schools, get the part of the property taxes. Vouchers people, they don't get part of the property taxes. That number, if you add all the other taxes that they get, is about $11,000 a student, not $5,000. And as I tried to explain to a person this morning, it's very difficult for us as legislators to say that homeschooling is wrong when we are seeing what's been indicated to me from some of the other reps and some of the things that's coming through the legislature, is that some of the school systems now are using homeschooling to say to this student, you know, you're really not doing well enough, you're probably going to fail, but if you go to homeschooling, there's a possibility that you could get a diploma. Now, it may not be the same diploma, but you can get a diploma. And so some of these people are moving off, and that's benefiting the regular schoo's graduation rate.
Are you hearing that to be a large number? I mean, are you hearing that to be a major problem throughout the state?
I'm just telling you what I can't say that for sure, because I'm just hearing this. And we even had some things go through our legislature this year that changed a little bit of homeschooling, that tightened it up a little, and said that some of those people could not be moved off. You know, that was not going to be an option. Now, when it comes back, everything comes back, then we'll see how the education bills really come out. And the senator is on the education committee. But what I am saying to you is that everybody that's getting money, I'm talking about money from the state, are being tested. The voucher system is a system that says, I want to move my child to Senator Raatz's school because I think it's better, and that's my money. That money follows the child. That's mine. So, but that number is less, considerably less. Probably instead of 5,000, it's probably 4. And I'm just using round numbers.
It's pretty close.
So the point I'm making to you is that what we're faced with, because of not the failure of education, because I think Tom was right, we got children raising children. Somebody called and said, could you take my kids to school? Those are the kind of things that we're facing. And we've had a slippage, for lack of a better description, in parental control. In other words, parents really taking a strong interest, like my mom, she took a strong interest in my education. She did pretty good for a long while, but she finally lost control.
Lost that battle.
You're watching a special In Focus on Whitewater Community Television, WGTV, Channel 11. We're joined by State Representative Tom Saunders, State Senator Jeff Raatz, State Representative Dick Hamm. Appreciate you gentlemen being with us. Your questions being accepted via phone, 973-8587. We're on Facebook Live, so you can send a question through that. Send a tweet at WCTV Info, or send us an email to WCTV@WCTV.info. I'm curious. We're talking about education, and things change very, very quickly, and what you all can deal with quickly might change. But the federal government is changing some of the guidelines that the Obama administration had put into place as far as transgender students in bathrooms. Does the state have the gumption to take this issue up, or the interest in taking this issue up, to kind of set some guidelines for the state so that transgender students can be treated equally, whether they're in school here in Richmond or Marion County or Lake County or wherever? Or is that something that you all just kind of want to walk away and leave to the individual school systems to decide?
I'll jump in, I guess. Yeah. I think there's been no initiative and been no talking, and I would.
And obviously the guidelines just came through the other
Right,
day,
yeah,
so again,
yeah, so
what you all can deal with based
exactly,
on the fact that you're in your session currently, but it may come around where we can look at next year
bet.
almost.
And so I would go back to even part of the governor's initiative, right, that he was going to keep the social issues off the table, but that we don't want to use that as an out either. But you know, it certainly influences the system to some degree. I can remember being, last year, I was in a school system not far from here, and I won't name the school, but it doesn't make any difference, when that initiative came from the White House to all the local school districts. It didn't go through necessarily the Department of Education at the state level. It came to the local school districts, and that school was dealing with the issue, and in my opinion, they were doing a very good job of it. Now, I'm not talking that every school is doing it either, right? Because what they chose to do internally, I thought was very equitable and done very tastefully, and done in a way that was non-discriminatory and very discreet. And so, not that that's part of it, but that's just the program that they had set in place. But in saying that, I don't know what other school systems have done either. So you make a good point. We don't know. It could come up in somewhere along the way. But the other part of the session is that we have until about the January the 10th. So we have the ability to begin to create legislation in November. And that's on our time essentially, and then about 10 days into the session, there's no more introduced legislation, nothing else being written, but bills can be amended. And then there's germane issues. It has to be in the, now the specifics of that I don't know, the mechanics of it necessarily, other than I know it most likely has to be in the same statute. So, go ahead, Tom.
I wouldn't be surprised to see some amendments pop up addressing this situation on both sides.
This year?
This year, yeah. How it'll come out, I don't know, but one of our 150 will introduce something.
If there's a bill, if there's a vehicle for it to happen, it's possible.
Any feeling where you might come down depending on how it's written? Or do you see yourself putting something out there to, because you've seen it, you've worked around education a long time, you're on the education committee. Do you see a way that this can be written on the state level where it is helpful, safe to the students, safe to the school, that can be put out there?
I've not seen any initiative on the Senate side whatsoever in the Education Committee necessarily, and this probably it's very unique in how bills are placed in committees. If it's an education bill that deals with education, it may end up in education. It may end up in Judiciary Committee. There's no
policy.
Or public policy maybe where the bill would end up, and it may be a bill. As I said, the statute would have to necessarily be there, being altered in some way, in germane to the issue for it to even come alive. Initially, I think, as I said, because of what I've seen, and it's not been a large issue, I've not been lobbied much, actually none this year at all, but seeing what the local school district did, I probably wouldn't create legislation to mandate it across the state at this stage of the game.
Well, it's a very, it's controversial. We got people on both sides of this. Mm-hmm. I think some of the problem that I've seen and heard about is some of the school district systems are trying to make a facility that says male or female, or handicap, yes. And you go in and you lock the door, and there's just one area to. But the biggest problem we're having, it seems like that where we got the men and the women, where we have more people can go in and use the facilities at the same time. Some of the people that are asking for the special facilities, saying that well, no, that's not good enough. I want to be able to use all of them. So I think what we got here is we've got a situation where both sides have got to come to the realism that my daughter does not want her daughter to go into a restroom where somebody comes in and says, because he says, I'm a female. And there lies the problem. And on the other side of it, I can see the person that says that I'm a transgender person, they feel like their rights are being infringed. So you can see where what we bump up against, I'm talking about as legislators, mm-hmm. is, and so what I'm saying to you is, if both sides don't come a little bit to get into the middle, if they create a restroom that says men, women, handicapped, and anybody can go in there and lock the door and use the restroom, if they can't accept that, then there's where the real problem starts to get created. And I don't want to discriminate against anybody over any issue. I think the state of Indiana needs to make it very clear to the world. We don't discriminate against anybody. We want everybody to come here. We like everybody. But on the other side of that, I'll respect your rights. You need to respect my rights. And that's kind of the thing that Tom was talking about in the windmill issue. And Tom, I was on Tom's bill on that. Mm-hmm. The key to that is that we understand that green energy is coming. We talked about that this morning. Right. But on the flip side of that, everybody's got to understand that the other person has the same rights as you do, and your rights should not infringe on his rights. Now, there's got to be some give and take to get into the middle. And that's where we're at. And that's why the social issue, that particular social issue, I think was changed by President Trump, because I think he sees the same thing that I'm saying, that there's just there's no middle ground.
Okay. Gentlemen, we are out of time. I need to let you know I greatly appreciate you being here. Representative Dick Hamm, State Senator Jeff Raatz, Representative Tom Saunders. You all will be back at Indiana University East next month, Friday morning, March 31st, I believe is the date. 8 a.m. is the next legislative session. I will leave you to your devices, and I will contact you sometime after the session is over, bring you back in, and we'll do a full 90 minutes where we can kind of do a wrap-up. You'll know where everything came out at that point. But I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Greatly. Exactly. Next week is going to be a very special In Focus here on WGTV. Beginning at 6 p.m., we'll have the State of the City address by Mayor Dave Snow. So that will take place Thursday evening, 6 p.m., March 2nd. Then March 9th, I also want to let you know about that show because there's a lot of road construction that's going to be taking place in this area, something that you like. And County Engineer Bob Warner, Greg Steens from the Engineering Department of the city, and Nathan Riggs from NDOT have agreed to come in and do a session. We're going to talk about some of the road construction that is going to be taking place in this area over the next year or so as we get through. This program can be seen beginning tonight at 8 o'clock, tomorrow 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. and on Sunday 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. It'll also be available on our video on demand site. Also look for the IU East Legislative Forum that we'll be running, and also that will be available on our video on demand site. Thanks to my guests for being here. Again, next Thursday night at 6 p.m. the State of the City address live here on In Focus. We hope you'll join us. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Hi, I'm Sherry Harlan, program host for Read Beside You. Join me on our next show with our guest, Kathy Roberts and Beth Overmeyer from ClaimAid, and Tawan Stoker, Director of Wellness from Read Health. You can watch Read Beside You on Thursdays at 8 p.m. on WCTV Channel 20.
You are watching Whitewater Government Television, Channel 11.